Now it's like I'm throwing it to it in the middle and I actually figure it out. I'm like, but it'll work out, you know what I mean? If it doesn't, it doesn't.
I'm sure it will. If it's meant to be, though, like you say,
It'll be okay, yeah. So, you know. My mom told me one time she used to have chickens.
So,
oh my gosh, that sounds like traumatizing.
she would turn something a little bit more than 60.
That is what something a little.
Let's pretend to see what happens.
Oh, we should start. Okay, that's good.
All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started now. Hopefully, how are y'all doing? Everybody's doing okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Good, good. Ready to start the weekend almost, right? I saw Wicked yesterday. And they did so good. So if you guys haven't gotten a chance to see Wicked, they're still here for another weekend. Oh my gosh, amazing performance, right? So anyways, y'all, if you didn't get a chance to scan the QR code on your way in, you can scan it right now, right? But today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about interviewing skills for biomedical engineering, right? And we'll also go way up into maybe some of your job search, right? So my name is Rudy, y'all. You might have seen me on here. I am the career advisor for all engineering campus here at CC. So very cool. You guys having a good day so far?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. No, it's been cool. I've been walking around campus today and hearing some really, really great things, especially like regarding your research and everything. So it's been really, really a delight. Cool. All right, my friends. So this is going to be our learning objectives for today. We're going to go ahead and start getting a better understanding of identifying our career options, because how many of us want jobs eventually? Yeah, right? That's kind of important. You know what I mean? We're going to identify some employers and learn some job search strategies to help you become a more competitive applicant, right? Learn about the types of interviews and understand the goals and importance of interviewing. Familiarize yourself with the process before, during, and after the interview, because each one is a distinct process, right? And then you're going to understand the appropriate communication skills, behaviors, hire, and knowledge of yourself and employers. If you guys have a question during any time throughout this presentation, feel free to ask it. I promise you I'm the meanest person on earth and I won't answer any of your questions, okay? No, for reals, it's going to be totally okay. But we always start off all of our presentations, y'all, with the top skills that employers want. Right? Every year, NACE is an organization and they're in charge of serving various employers throughout the United States, right? And what they do is they survey them and they ask them, what do you guys want in potential candidates, right? And for this year, employers have stated they want everything from communication, critical thinking, to career and self-development skills, to technology and teamwork, right? Now, why is this important to you, right? All your interview is going to boil down to is are these skills, right? Because remember that these are the skills that they want to see in you all, okay? So, this being said, let's go ahead and talk about biomedical engineering, right? So, the U.S. Department of Labor predicts that employment for biomedical engineers is going to grow within the next decade, right? Obviously, right? Now, new jobs are available in different parts, right? Anything from prosthetics, right? Biotechnology, pharmaceutical. There's a lot of options for you all if you choose not to go into research, okay? And because it is a growing industry, you definitely have those options there, okay? So this being said, my friend, you're probably asking yourself in this whole journey, where do you begin, right? You have to identify some top 10 skills, values. You've got to start looking into the company's missions and goals that interest you, right? Follow companies on social media, and I'll show you some strategies that you can utilize for that, right? Identify some top 5 organizations in your field, create career goals, and identify some job titles, because I know that that's one that we sometimes struggle with too, right? Now I want to show you guys something that we got from a biomedical engineering report, right? We get these reports 2 times a year. So right over here, right, notice that for the specific type of industry, scientific research and development services, right, we have an employment of 4,800 people, right, with an annual wage of 104,000. The regional breakdown, right, where we see the most biomedical engineers is California, right? We guessed it, but look at that. We have also Texas, Florida, right, Massachusetts, big one. And then look at all the different types of industry that are the most popular, at least in the 2020 survey year, right? We have medical equipment, scientific research, everything from that to general medical and surgical hospitals, right? So there are tons of options for you. Now, what does this mean for you, right? Well, before we go off into that, I did want to tell you all that here for the career services, and the reason for this QR code is after this presentation, I'm going to email you this slideshow so that way you get a chance to look through it and take any notes, right? We have some biomedical engineering major information for you, right, that you can click into, right? And then there's some research tools that you can utilize to help you identify some job titles for you, right? And we're going to go over a couple of them. And a couple of them you already know. Have any of you guys gotten to utilize Handshake yet? Yeah, okay, perfect. So there's options out there, right? And then, of course, us here at Career Talent Development, my friends, will help you too with everything from trying to look through industry-specific websites, to interview tips, to resume advice, CV advice, and internship tips, all right? Now, let's talk about those industries that will hire you, right? Because I keep saying you have options. You could choose to go into the government, right? You could choose to go into the private sector, education, healthcare, medical device, biotech, pharmaceutical, right? Think tanks, multilateral organizations, pharmaceutical or startups, or any sort of entrepreneurship opportunities, okay? There's a bunch of opportunities for you. Now, this being said, these are the top companies where they have surveyed, right, where biomedical engineers would like to work at, right? Do you see any company that might be appealing to you?
It's missing Medtronic.
Yeah. Right? So, pretty interesting stuff. Now, some common occupations, though, right, could be anything from a medical technology developer, right, biomaterials engineer, biomaterials developer, biomedical engineer consultant, right? So these are all possible options for you as well if you choose to go into industry. Now, remember though, that you have tons of options. You don't just have to limit yourself to those top companies that I was looking for, that I was telling you about, right? But also keep your mind open. You might not even realize it, but look at that. Even Coca-Cola has opportunities for biomedical engineering, right? There's tons of opportunities. You just actually gotta go out there, right? And it helps if you go to some of the career fairs and engage in conversation with some of the recruiters, because you just never know what opportunities that the company might have, right? So very interesting stuff. Now, guys, one of the resources that's available to you too is if you click into Career Center resources, you'll have something known as Vault. And inside Vault, if you type in biomedical engineering, what it'll do is it'll generate a guidebook filled with different occupations and average pay for biomedical engineers. And this is also a great resource to get started when you have no idea what job titles are available in your field. Okay, so I would recommend Vault as well. Really, really cool. And then you also have just different type of job search websites. One of my favorite ones though, and this is a screenshot of Vault, y'all, because it'll break down some videos of some job titles for you. One of my favorite ones is ONET. Have any of y'all gotten a chance to utilize ONET during your job search yet? Really, really cool. You can type in biomedical engineers, and what it'll do is it'll generate a list of tasks that are very common in your field. Why is this beneficial for you? You could put some of these tasks in your resume, right? Now, what's cool here too is that it'll also showcase a list of technology, of software that employers like to see in candidates. If you ever see a flame next to a particular piece of software, right, that is considered a competitive skill in your resume. So notice, right, we have a few flames right over here next to any sort of these things, right? MATLAB. You guys proficient in MATLAB? Some of you? Maybe? Yeah, exactly, right. That's a competitive skill to have. Now, if you're not proficient in something with a flame next to it, what do you think that you should do to help your odds out a little bit? Learn it, right? And you don't have to be proficient and like take a freaking $5,000 course on it, right? But there's courses like LinkedIn Learning that are also available to you in the resources section for Handshake, right? That will show you like the basics of the software in about 5 hours, right? You just need to know enough of it so that you can navigate your way through an interview, okay? Now, another cool thing about ONET is it will also actually link you to specific job openings in that major, right, throughout the country. And here it is, related occupations, right? This will also help you generate a list of occupation titles for your job search. So my favorite out of these has been ONET. I really do think that ONET is very, very helpful, okay? Now, if you choose to go into government though, y'all, they have their own website, usajobs.gov. What you'll do is you'll create your website, your profile, you'll upload your resume. Keep in mind though that for a lot of the positions in the government, you do have to use a federal resume, right? Does anybody know what a federal resume is? It's a little bit different than the average resume, right? With the federal resume, you're basically listing a complete history of your employment, and then you're also listing detailed information of your previous supervisors and your references. So unlike the traditional resume that's about 1 to 2 pages long, right? And the CV where you actually are just mostly listing like research, with a federal, you're listing everything about yourself. And that is because they're gonna be doing an extensive background check on you, right? Now, if that sounds intimidating, don't worry. We have federal resume templates to help you out too at our office, okay? By the way, you guys know where Y'all Foods is? Yeah, we're right next door there too. So if you ever have a question like regarding a federal resume or anything like that, come see us and we'll help you out. Cool? Awesome. So yeah, so this is gonna look like if you guys create an account with USA Jobs, right? You could also start your networking on LinkedIn. Are any of you guys in any sort of biomedical engineering groups on LinkedIn? Yeah, that can be beneficial too. So what a group on LinkedIn is basically a group of professionals in that particular field. They'll get together in this little group and they'll advertise different opportunities, right? And some groups are a little bit more conversant than the others, right? But they're really, really beneficial. I'm in a few writing and education groups, and lots of times some other professionals will post up a job posting or they'll just give good advice. So I would recommend that if you haven't utilized LinkedIn to join some professional orgs or some general groups, start utilizing it. It's actually really, really cool. And it'll also provide you the chance to start networking, okay? Now, of course, though, it's easy to utilize the job section on Handshake, but have you gotten the chance to utilize the employer section on Handshake? That part is really cool. Now, on the employer section, there's over 200 biomedical engineering employers, and it's really cool because if you click on a particular employer right over here, right? Well, first off, let me break it down. You have the name of the employer, you have the address, you have the size of the company, so you can tell if it's a smaller startup or if it's a bigger corporation. But if you click into it, oftentimes you'll actually have the name of a recruiter who's responsible for posting the jobs on Handshake, Why is that beneficial to you? What do you think you could do with the name of a recruiter? Reach out. Yes, perfect, right? Quite often is the case, my friends. You're gonna apply to a job, you're not gonna get a call back, right? You actually have to do the reaching out yourself to the recruiter and kind of remind them, hey, I applied this, right? Have you guys gotten a chance to look through my application yet, right? I will tell you, in my professional experience, I've only had a job call me one time back when I've directly applied. The other times I've had to reach out to the recruiter or I've had to reach out to HR and tell them, hey, this is my application, my friends. Have you guys gotten a chance to look through my qualifications? And a lot of times they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, we didn't get a chance, or I didn't even see your resume, right? So by emailing the recruiter and reaching out, you're kind of giving them a friendly reminder that, hey, you're here, you matter, okay? So look through the employer section in Handshake. It's very, very useful, right? And then of course, if you haven't, you can look at the jobs. And by the way, y'all, if you're looking for that employers tab, it's gonna be at the top left of your screen right over here, okay? Just by typing in biomedical, you'll see a bunch of opportunities there. If you need OPT or CPT, if you click the all filters, you can filter it with the opportunities that are available for OPT, CPT as well, okay? But before even getting the interview, right, here are 6 ways to maximize your career search, right? Of course, start off with your resume, right? A lot of times I get asked the question, resume or CV, right? And usually the job posting will specify, but if it doesn't specify, I would assume and just do a resume, okay? Of course, though, if you're gonna go more into research, make sure that you do have your CV, okay? Create your professional and online presence. You can start that with LinkedIn. Build your new skills. So again, if you come across that software that you don't know, right, make sure that you start trying to learn anything you can about any particular software that you're just not that knowledgeable in, right? Practice your interviewing skills, and with us, you could actually book mock interviews, and I'll show you something a little bit later with BMock. It's a new function that was just unveiled that will let you practice your mock interviews on the software, right? Cultivate your professional network, and then of course, anytime you need help with anything career related, feel free to book a meeting with one of us at Career Services, okay? So we just want you to have all your questions answered and want to help you out as much as possible, right? But that being said, we talked a little bit about some options that are available to you. Let's go ahead and talk about what is the purpose of the interview. So I pose this question to you all, my friends. What do you think the purpose of the interview is?
Put a face to the resume.
Okay, I love that. Put a face to the resume. Very, very good. Anybody else?
To get to know you.
To get to know you, right? Cool. Anybody else?
Sell yourself so you can get hired.
To sell yourself so you could get hired. Very good, right? Is the interview also beneficial though for you to try to get to know a company? Yes, my friends, it works both ways, right? Yes, of course, the employer is trying to get a chance to know you, but you, this is very important, and don't forget this, you're also trying to get a feel if it's gonna be a right company that you could see yourself working at, right? That you would feel comfortable, because the last thing that you wanna do is accept a job offer at a company that you're going to be miserable at, okay? So don't underestimate that portion of the interview process too. You're also interviewing them, okay? Now, that being said, remember what I talked to you about earlier. Those are the skills, those are the skills that the employers want, right? But all your interview is gonna boil down to is a combination of soft skills and hard skills. So before going into the interview, please know and be prepared to give example of times where you've had to demonstrate leadership, teamwork, responsibility, but also be prepared for those technical questions on MATLAB, SolidWorks, right? If the job posting specifies that. And more information on that a little later, okay? Now these are the types of interviews that you will encounter. Anything from formal and informal interviews. Formal, right? Tell me about yourself, etc., question, answer. Informal though, you're gonna feel like you're having kind of just a regular conversation with a recruiter. Has anybody had an informal interview yet? Those can be challenging because the conversation, since they're just so informal, you're gonna be wanting to kind of let your guard down, right? Don't let your guard down. Even though the recruiter's being informal, it doesn't give you the permission to be informal, okay? Sequential and panel interview. The very first professional interview that I did, they didn't tell me anything, so I assumed that I was gonna go into the interview, it was gonna be one person, right? I walk into the interview, there are 18 people seated right there, right? That was a panel interview. It threw me off guard and it was really, really terrifying, but it was okay. We made it through. All right, So keep in mind that when you're dealing with a panel interview, y'all, it could be anywhere from 2 people to, like I just said, 18 or even 30 people. It just depends on the company, and it just depends on how many people are available to be at your interview for that day, okay? But deep breaths, you got this, okay? The group interview, those are particularly challenging. The very first job I did, right, it was at a yogurt shop, and our yogurt shop was just featured on Undercover Boss. So it was very, very famous, and I had to do a group interview with me and 30 people, and it was very intimidating, just because they would ask a question, and they would post it to the group, and you'd have to raise your hand and then like just add on to the next person's interview, all right? But again, I feel like the panel interview is a little bit more intimidating than the group interview. Situational, you'll give a bunch of situational-based questions, expected to answer questions, answer over the situational-based questions, and then the phone or video call interview. What am I seeing the most common for you all biomedical this past year, right? I've seen 3 rounds of interviews. The first round of interviews will be a Zoom interview, right? Sometimes the second round will be another Zoom interview, right? Or they'll invite you to an in-person formal interview, right? And then the third round will either be another Zoom interview or another in-person, right? Have I seen a lot of panel interviews? I've seen a mixture, 50-50. Sometimes you'll interview with 1 or 2 recruiters, sometimes you'll interview with 5 or 6. Those are the most common types I've been seeing for this year. That being said, let's break down the content that you'll encounter, right? Whether this is gonna be at career fairs or whether this will be when you're invited to the interview, okay? So, I think that the easiest type of interview, right, besides the general about interview, right, where they'll ask you a question, you'll answer, is the resume interview. Sometimes a recruiter will be like, hey, can I see your resume? They'll go through your resume, right? So I see that you did a drive robot building project. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that project, right? Very nice. If you know your qualifications, if you know the things that you put on here, very easy to get through, right? The challenging part about this particular type of interview is, remember, whatever you list on your resume, they're allowed to ask you about, right? And that includes technical questions. So if you've listed that you are proficient in SolidWorks, what a recruiter might ask you is, so I see that you've listed SolidWorks right here under your skills. What do you think are the limitations with that software? If you don't have enough experience, right? Is that gonna look kind of good? No, right? It just depends on what the recruiter feels like asking you that day. Okay, so that's a challenging part with that. Now, sometimes I've seen it, you'll start your interview and you'll go up into a technical interview in your first round of interview. That has happened before, okay? And then also I've seen, again, case studies, which are, again, long scenarios that you might encounter on the job, either with a client or with a patient, and they'll ask you a bunch of questions over those long scenarios, okay? So just keep your cool, okay? You got this. But that being said, y'all, let's go ahead and start talking about things that we do before, during, and after the interview, because there's a lot of stuff that you have to do before, during, and after it, right? I always like to look at this like an iceberg. The interview is actually going to be the very peak of the iceberg, but all of the preparation that you have to do is underneath, right? And it's a lot. If you want a successful interview, you have to prepare. There's no way around it, okay? I guarantee you, if you prepare for that interview and you spend that chunk of the iceberg preparing, it's going to come out good, okay? So what do I mean by that? The first thing you have to do is research, look at the job posting. There was a recruiter that came up to me in October after a company info session, and they said, Rudy, I wish that all the candidates knew that all their answers are in the job posting. Everything that I want to see in their resume, everything that I'm going to ask them about is in the job posting, but nobody ever bothers to actually read it and study it. So let me give you an example of that, right? So like, we have typical responsibilities involved, like preventive maintenance, right? Calibration, maintenance of medical devices, right? What do you think a question they might ask you about is? Do you think they might ask you something about a medical device?
Yeah.
Yes. It's listed in the job posting, right? If you have no idea what technical questions that they're gonna ask you about, it's already listed in the job posting, right? If the job posting says you need to be proficient in AutoCAD, they're probably gonna ask you something about AutoCAD, right? But look at this too. You could also see the soft skills that they're gonna ask you about. Right over here, they're gonna say, required to work independently, required time management skills, right? What do you think is an interview question they might ask you? I have an easy one. Can you talk about a time where you had to balance multiple projects, and how did you go about that? Does that not communicate time management? Perfect, right? All your answers are in the job posting. You just have to go back and read it and study it, right? I promise you, it's not gonna stripe away from that. Cool? All right, now of course, once you're done researching the job posting, you guys gotta research the company. I know that takes a little long, but it's gonna be so worth it. So research the company's philosophy statement. Research any cool projects that they're working on, right? Because the first question in an interview is always gonna be, tell me about yourself. The second question is, why do you wanna work for us? Okay, and if you can't answer why you wanna work at that company without giving a little bit of information on the company, right? It's not gonna look as competitive. It really looks outstanding if you went the extra mile and learned a little bit about the company you're interviewing at, okay? Now, of course, prepare your resume and CV because nobody knows this document, or no one should know this document better than yourself, okay? I had a student a while ago, right? They're like, hey, the recruiter asked me some questions on my resume and I bluffed up those last bullet points and I had no idea how to answer them, okay? So please, 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 I cannot guarantee that enough. Whatever you put on your resume, they will ask you about, right? For biomedical engineering, they're very interested in the projects that you're working on and in the research that you've conducted if you've done research, okay? So know those projects very well, know that research very well, okay? But going hand in hand with that, right, your portfolio. My friends, do any of you all have a portfolio? Raise your hands. Yes, perfect, right? Y'all, I cannot emphasize that enough. It's not just good enough for you to talk about a project, but if you can actually bring out a picture of what that project is, right? Or if you can bring out a graph that talks about the results of your research, oh my gosh, that looks so good because you've provided me with a visual of what you've talked about. And visuals help people remember. Can you imagine if I was doing this presentation right now without any sort of slideshow? Probably would have easily lost track of all the stuff that I've said, right? So I can't underestimate, I can't even overestimate that enough. Please, 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 y'all, make sure that you guys have a portfolio. And it's also gonna help you out in your own interviews, right? Because in your interviews, when you start talking about a project, it's really easy to start just talking and lose track of what you're saying. But then you could easily just pull out a picture of the project and you could tell the recruiter, I actually have a picture of this project, can I show it to you? Right? And it helps out a lot. The very first job that the very first professional job, I used to be a high school English teacher, by the way. For my very first teaching interview, I didn't have a portfolio with me just yet. I had a 200-page portfolio, but I wasn't about to bring that to an interview. What I did instead is I brought 20 books that I was reading. I forgot what they asked me, but there was one point in the interview where I showed there was a panel of 5 other teachers there. I showed them each book, and I ended up with Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. And ultimately, I got the job. And the principal, when they called me to tell me I got the job, they're like, who in the world brings 20 books to a job interview, right? You did that, and that made you stick out, okay? So that's what I'm saying. If you don't have a portfolio, right, what are you gonna bring? Do you have the actual project? Do you have an image of the project, right? What are you gonna bring in the interview to make you stick out? There's a lot of physical stuff that you could rely on, right? And if you're conducting your interview with Zoom, which, like I said earlier, is very common now because of the pandemic, right? Don't be afraid to tell the recruiter, yeah, I actually have it on the project on my portfolio. Can I share my screen, right? And 9 out of 10 times the recruiter is gonna be like, of course you could share your screen. Let's see the project. The only time they'll say no is if the interview is running short on time, but then you could just respond with telling them, can I email you my portfolio after the interview? They'll always say yes. Now, if you have no idea what a portfolio is or how to create one, we actually have a workshop coming up on April the 12th from 12 to 1, right? And it is build your own online portfolio specifically for engineering majors. Wix is gonna be presenting y'all very useful information, okay? But if you also need help with a portfolio, feel free to book a meeting with me and I'll show you some examples that I have for you, okay? Very useful stuff, but I promise you, once you have your portfolio, you're gonna love it. It's gonna be really cool. All right, now guys, VMOC, have any of y'all utilized VMOC yet for resume or CV feedback, critique? So it's an instant resume feedback system just for you all. If you go to vmoc.com/FIU career, you'll be able to access the platform. Again, I'm gonna email you this slideshow afterwards though, so that way if you guys want to, you can click into there. VMOC will give you instant feedback on your resume, CV, and they just unveiled a new feature that will let you practice mock interviews in your major, right? So it will give you major-specific interview questions. You can record yourself answering the questions, and it'll give you feedback on everything from the times you said or in your answer to the amount of times you've looked at the camera. Very interesting. It'll also give you a score, but I promise you, don't pay too much attention to the score because the system is not perfect. It's going to be a little harsh, and I don't want the score to get you down. Okay, so ignore the score, but definitely try the mock interview function a couple of times, just so that way you can kind of see what it tells you. And it's really, really fascinating to see what AI is capable nowadays, right? So try VMOC. All right, now your attire, y'all, of course you know this because you all look so wonderful today, right? Definitely business professional if you're going to an interview. However, I know that we can't always all afford stuff, right? So business casual will be totally fine. But do something that make you stick out, right? You can do little things. You don't have to wear a complete like orange suit, right? But look at that. Like usually I add a little flower top, and that's little things that I put, or like I don't
wear orange suits.
Yeah. Oh. No, but see. But what I'm saying, like, if you own it and if it works for you, go for it. You know what I'm saying? Because there's last time, like, sometimes I hear like people say you have to dress as boring as possible, right? That's not true. There's so many stuff that you could do with fashion to really showcase your individuality. Princess Diana did it all the time, and I know that was Princess Diana. You ain't Princess Diana, right? But there's so many stuff that you can do with fashion to showcase that individuality and just make you stick out. Because truly, y'all, though you getting that job is going to boil down to one thing and one thing only, and that's going to be how are you going to stick out above the 100 other people that are also conducting that same interview, right? And the way you're going to stick out is by doing these small little things, having your portfolio, right? Having the flower tie, and really the details you give in your responses. That all makes you stick out, okay? But yeah, never underestimate something fashion-wise. But definitely the biggest one, y'all, please know your location medium. So if you're invited to a Zoom interview, make sure that you know that what time it is. Make sure that you even know it's on Zoom, because sometimes, again, sorry, it might not be a Zoom interview. Lots of companies have their own version of Zoom, and they'll want you to conduct the interview on that version, on that specific platform. Make sure that you have downloaded that platform before the interview so you have time to go into it, right? I would say if it's an in-person interview, please make sure to arrive 10 to 15 minutes early. If it's really, really far, I usually like to arrive an hour early. I don't go into the interview until like 10 to 15 minutes before the interview, but like I'll wait in my car for 45 minutes just because I don't know, my car's kind of old. I don't know if she's gonna give me trouble, okay? So be aware of all of that, okay? Now, of course though, y'all, please showcase your excitement, enthusiasm, and confidence. I don't know if you've heard about this, but if you do that Superman pose, right, and you feel confident,
Oh,
it will
I heard
probably
about
be.
that.
Yeah, right. I promise you, I thought it was just a myth, right? But it actually does work, right? The biggest thing is that on an interview day, your stress is gonna be through the roof, right? So you need to do anything that you can to try to lower that stress, okay? I don't know about you, but I can't cram last minute, like 5 minutes before a final, right? Like it just isn't gonna work for me. If I don't know it 5 minutes before the final, then I'm not gonna know it on the final, right? So if you did all your prepping before the interview, on the day of the actual interview, you should be good. Your main goal, your main priority should be just trying to lower your stress so that you can perform well. Because you can't perform well if your stress is high, okay? So while I'm in the car for those 45 minutes, I'm there listening to music. I know some of my friends like to call other friends before an interview just so that they can hype each other up, okay? But yeah, definitely, right? Anything that will help you get into your zone, that's awesome. Also, of course, right, never underestimate the power of a good fidget. If you're doing a Zoom interview, y'all can have a fidget underneath the table throughout the whole interview, and it helps, okay? Make sure y'all that you eat, hydrate, please brush your teeth. No one wants to smell your breath, right? No gum during the interview because it happened to me once, and I was talking and the gum fell out of my mouth. So awkward, very awkward, right? But you could use breath spray if you're concerned about your breath, right? No perfume. If you're just a really stinky person, make sure it's light. Let me tell you about the no perfume though. Like I'm actually allergic if it's like a really heavy like flower scent. Like I'll start sneezing throughout the whole interview. So if you don't know what your interviewer is going to be allergic to. So that's why I would say shy away from it. But if you, like I said, if you're really smelly, you could use a little bit. Okay, just a little bit. All right, so we've tackled everything that we have to do before the interview. Let's talk about what you have to do during the interview. But before I do that, do I have any questions of the preparation that you got to do beforehand?
Do you think the portfolio needs to be like a website?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you definitely have the option, right? If you get invited to a Zoom interview, your probably gonna need a website, right? Personally, my portfolio, since I'm in education, my portfolio is on Google Slideshow, right? You have the option. Do you wanna make a website? Do you wanna either create your own website? Do you wanna use WordPress or Wix? I see a lot of people use WordPress or Wix and those look beautiful, right? Or do you want a slideshow? Do you want to use Google Slides? Do you want to link a recruiter to a PDF slideshow? That's all up to you, right? Now, if you're going to go to a physical job interview, right? Either have a physical portfolio in like a binder where you could print out stuff, or you could bring a tablet, right? And you could easily click into your portfolio. Although I will caution you that you won't always have Wi-Fi access in your interview location, okay? I have also a physical portfolio, but I will be honest, I haven't had to use my physical portfolio since before COVID. So right now it's been collecting a little bit of dust. I use the electronic one constantly though, okay? So yeah, I also have students that have like a main electronic portfolio or a main website, and then they have a smaller slideshow with like 3 or 4 slides of things that they really want to showcase to the recruiter at the interview to help keep everyone more focused. So you could do that too. Good question. Anybody else? Okay. Now, guys, also, and I'll go into it during this first slide, right? The interview is about to start, right? So make sure that the cell phone is off, but that's, again, easy, right? That should be common sense. But please don't forget extra resumes or CVs. You never know. Lots of times, or sometimes, the people that are interviewing you, they might have forgotten a copy of your resume, right? So it helps, it really showcases how prepared you are if you're just like, oh, here, it's okay, I have a copy of my resume right over here. I usually like to print between 5 to 6 copies, although that didn't do me very good when I had those 18 people interviewing me. But it's okay, because we are prepared, right? Bring your portfolio, bring any samples of your work. Remember my 20 book story, right? If you have any list of, well, not the list of references so much, once you get the job offer, they'll ask for your references then. However, if you have any letters of recommendation printed, you could do that too, right? Notebook, and a personal touch that I like to do, I like to bring physical thank you cards. Think about it. When was the last time you ever got a physical thank you card? Have you ever gotten a physical thank you card? Exactly, right? I interviewed for Teach for America in 2018. And what I did is right before the interview, and that interview was very long, it was 8 hours long. I went to Target and I bought 10 thank you cards, $7. I don't know how much they are now, you know, inflation. $7, 10 thank you cards. And what I was doing is as each interviewer was talking, I was taking notes on what they were saying. So was this person the first person in their family to graduate high school? I took notes on that, right? And I kept them all in a notebook by my side. During my lunch break, I filled out the thank you card with all the information I took on each recruiter. And by the end of the interview, right, I gave each recruiter a physical thank you card. And they were like, oh my gosh, they've never seen that before. They're like, oh my gosh, who does that? Who gives a thank you card? I got into Teach for America. So it was pretty cool. And I can't guarantee that a thank you note is gonna get you a job, but it will be a nice touch to make you stick out, right? Now I understand we don't always have the time to fill out a physical thank you note, but can a thank you email suffice? Yes, right? It happens all the time. It's a really nice touch, and it's a really nice seal to the perfect interview, in my opinion, right? Be polite to everyone, especially the receptionist that greets you, because I promise you, they do talk a lot about you. I've seen it happen. It has happened to me, but it's really, really easy to be nice to the receptionist. They're kind people. Okay, cool. Now your initial contact, y'all. We know about the handshake, right? Nice, firm. However, what I've noticed and what caught me off guard, actually, particularly with this position, not everyone does handshakes anymore. Can you guess why? We're in the middle of a pandemic, right? Yeah, exactly. So when I interviewed for this position, I hadn't done a job interview since before COVID, and I came up to my supervisor, right? And I reached out, and she's like, right, and we did the elbows, okay? So when in doubt, go for the elbows. I promise you, you won't be offending anyone, right? The handshake is now phasing out of style, and it might phase back into style again as the pandemic, right, starts, you know, subsiding a little bit. But yeah, so keep that in mind, right? Now, another thing is make sure that your posture is great throughout the duration of the interview. I know that for the longer interviews, it's easy to start slacking off, but just catch yourself slacking, right? And go back up, sitting up again. I'll tell you for my 8-hour interview, I started like, you know, a little bit suffering on the posture, but it's okay, we got through it. So yeah, guys, sometimes what helps is if you have a Zoom interview, if you're worried on the posture, if you find like, if you have either a standing up desk or like me, I have a piece of a cardboard box. That's a really large cardboard box. I leave the computer on there. I can't sit down throughout an interview though because I have too much anxiety and then I feel like my posture would just suck. But if you're standing up through an interview, you'll notice how much your posture improves. Okay, so that you can utilize that strategy as well. Now, your types of interview questions that you will encounter, a little bit about kind of like what we said before, you'll usually start off with some general background questions, right? Very basic, tell us about yourself, strengths, weaknesses, etc. You'll have behavioral questions, situational, and technical. We're gonna go through what each one of these means, right? Now, 100% though, of the time, your first question will always be, tell me about yourself. I guarantee it, okay? And of course, it's kind of like when you go up to a stranger, of course you're gonna introduce yourself, right? What happens if you don't introduce yourself to a stranger? Sketchy, right? That's why you're kind of scared to approach, well, when those survey people start approaching you, you know, on campus, you're just like, I don't want the other way, right? So tell me about yourself. It serves as your introduction. And if you could hit your education, your work experience, your any current status, transferable skills, and employment opportunities, you're good. Let me show you an easy acronym for that though. You can think of the acronym NEWS. Start off with your name, go into your education, go off into your work experience, skills that you have to offer, and then my personal touch, I like to add the philosophy. Why did you choose to go into this industry, right? Or what are you passionate about? Or why do you want to work for this company, right? With done successfully, it's going to be great, right? And you would have already actually answered the next question, which is why do you want to work for us? If you had the P, you've already answered that, all right? Very, very cool. Now, if you hit all of these things, you can feel free to add personal facts that are not too personal, right, about yourself. So like I've seen candidates hit all of this, and then they'll end off with, and my favorite flavor of ice cream is vanilla. That's a pretty cool touch to the interview because it adds kind of like that humorous tone and it breaks away from all the seriousness. And then later on when they're discussing your answers, they're like, what do you think of Vanilla Guy? Oh yeah, okay, right? I've also seen people add their hobbies after they've hit all of these, right? I'm an avid book reader. I'm currently reading Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, right? Which is about 800 or 1,000 pages. I don't know if you guys have read Les Mis. It's very intense. But it's a good book, But anyways, feel free to add personal touches if you hit these things first. Remember though, the biggest mistake that you can do when you answer this question is to just talk about yourself in regards to not the job, right? Just talk about personally. I've seen people just talk about their dogs throughout the whole duration of this question, right? When they're asking you this question, they're really asking you, tell us what you can do for us, right? Tell me about your qualifications. So you need to make sure that you're hitting these points first. Here's an elevator pitch example, you all. But again, you'll have this slideshow, you can do it on your own time. VMOC will help you practice your elevator pitch as well, and it'll give you different examples of what you can utilize for that elevator pitch, okay? And there's that VMOC once more. Now, behavioral questions, y'all. Behavioral questions are experience-based, task-oriented. So these are these questions that are, tell me about a time when, explain when, right? These are all situations that you've encountered in your past. So again, give me an example of when you showed initiative and took the lead. Give me an example of when you set a goal and were able to meet or achieve it, right? Now, they're a little bit different from situational based. These are all future-based scenarios that you will encounter in the job you're applying for. How would you react if, sorry, that's supposed to say colleague, not college. I do apologize. Did not want to complete their part of a project. What would you do if a client was not satisfied with the product you delivered, okay? Now, with both answers, you could use the STAR format where you just talk about your situation, task, action, and results. That is a lot to remember, right? If you book an appointment with one of us, you could practice as much as possible, or you can utilize VMOC, right? But I guarantee if you use the STAR method, you're going to be able to come up with a nice interview answer, right? And it really boils down to just three things, right? What's the situation? What did you do in that situation? What were the results of what you did? And please frame your results in a positive light, okay? So very, very cool. Now, of course, your favorite technical questions. And I like to look at technical questions in two categories. There's the easier type of technical question, right? Where they'll ask you about your opinion on something. Just like that software question I asked you earlier, right? What do you feel are the limitations on AutoCAD, okay? Because you get to insert at least your opinion into it, it's not as difficult, right? Then there's the more challenging type of technical question. This is gonna feel like you're being asked like a pop quiz in class, right? They might ask you, right? Tell me about systems physiology, right? Or they could even ask you, like for electrical engineering, they could ask, define the terms inductance and capacitance, okay? So a lot of times you'll get thrown off guard, you're just like, I haven't heard that terminology since like intro to engineering or something like that, right? So just try your best to answer them. Now, if you don't know the answer to a technical question, right? First off, make sure that you understand all parts of the question. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. I've been on the other side too, where we're interviewing candidates, and it's always really cool when somebody says, I'm not really sure what you're trying to ask. Can you clarify for me? It's totally fine with my opinion, okay? Another thing is, be honest if you don't know something, but don't accept defeat, right? If they ask you a MATLAB question and you have no idea, don't say, I don't know, I'm sorry, right? You've just accepted defeat. Say, I don't know, but what can I learn so that I can succeed in this position? Oh, snap, okay? That's somebody that I want on my team. Someone that wants to work hard to solve a problem, right? Or you could do what presidential candidates do all the time when they get asked a question they don't want to answer. They pivot, right? So if you don't know something like talking about like AutoCAD, right? I don't know about AutoCAD, however, I have done a lot of projects on SolidWorks, including, bam, go off into what you've done on SolidWorks. These are all options for you instead of just saying, I don't know. So remember, you can either, of course, don't accept defeat, right? But tell them what you should study to be successful in the role, or pivot into something that you do know, okay? But don't accept defeat. That's the worst thing you could do for a technical question, all right? Now, during the phone and virtual interviews, right, dress up and stand up if you feel more confident, have your resume and pen and handy, and any other thing that you want aside from you, right? If there's a delay, and there will be a delay, it happens all the time. Just be patient. It's really, really annoying, and be aware of time zones. I just had a friend who did, they're trying to do 8 interviews, and they accidentally booked 3 interviews the wrong time zone, right? They weren't paying attention, so please, please, please be aware of that, okay? And if it's been 5 to 10 minutes that the employer hasn't started like a Zoom interview, right? And this happens a lot too. You just get busy, right? Feel free to give them a call and just let them know that you're politely waiting on the other end, okay? On my Zoom, like for my little Zoom interview setup, I always have a bottle of water right over here. I have my little fidget toy right over here, right? And then I have my notebook with my little like writing down facts, or notebook filled with facts that I've written about the company the night prior or the days prior. So yeah, do whatever works best for you. Does anybody have any questions on the Zoom interview setup? Yeah, of course.
Should we not wait any longer than 5-10 minutes, or we call them like that soon?
Oh no, like I would call them, try to give them a reminder, like around the 10-minute mark, right? I'd say though, I would wait, if I was in your shoes and like, let's say you called them or you didn't have a phone number, I would wait throughout the duration of the entire interview, right? And I know like something, because it does happen, right? Sometimes the recruiter is 30 minutes late, right? And again, it's just because they're not trying to be inconsiderate, right? But there's just a lot of things that they're doing on their end, right? So you might not even know that until you're right there. Now it is inconsiderate that they didn't give you like the message, hey, running 30 minutes late beforehand, but it helps for you to just stay on the call. So I'd say throughout the whole time that you book to interview, stay on call. Don't give up on that call, okay? Because you never know if they'll join in a little late. Does that help answer?
Yes, thank you.
Of course. Cool. Guys, make sure that your lighting is great. Make sure that you test the audio, please. And if you don't have a mic or something, or if you're using the little webcam mic and it's terrible, buy a lavalier mic from Amazon. They're like $30 or $20. It's a good investment, I promise you, okay? But if you don't have good audio for the interview, the interview you could be the best interviewer in the world, but if you don't have good audio, it's not gonna be good, okay? Because they're not gonna understand what you're trying to say. Cool. Now, this is really important too, y'all. There is a set of legal questions that an employer is allowed to ask you, right? Everything from marital status to national origin to sexual orientation. However, right, there is a way that they can phrase it where they can ask it legally, right? So for example, they can't ask you if you're a US citizen, but they can ask you if you're authorized to work in the United States, right? So be very careful about what you share personally about yourself in an interview, okay? I always use this example as well. And it's a horrible example, but it's something that I personally witnessed, right? So this was back in the day, one of the first job interviews that I was doing on the other side where we were interviewing candidates, right? And the person that we were interviewing, at the beginning of the interview, they disclosed that they were pregnant, right? They were like, I'm just really excited, I'm pregnant, right? After that person interviewed, the person in charge of the interview said, I kind of don't want to hire that candidate because they're going to have to take time off, right? It was very illegal that they did that. However, whatever you say in an interview, it stays with the interviewer's mind. So be very careful about what you disclose about your personal, about personal stuff, right, in an interview. You just, no matter how friendly that recruiter comes across, right, at the end of the day, it's still business, okay? Now, if you do stumble across an illegal job question, right, don't just call them out and be like, that's an illegal job question, you can't ask me that, right? Be professional, keep your cool. You could say something like, that's an interesting question, but I would like to focus more on my skills and qualifications. Or, my blank here will not interfere with the role's responsibilities if they bring up like any sort of like disability that you may have, right? Or you could say, I'd like to talk about my skills and qualifications first, and then we can focus on my accommodations later in the hiring process, okay? But yeah, very nice and easy way to pivot your way out of that situation. A lot of times, guys, if you encounter an illegal job question, there's two things that will come to your mind. Sometimes the recruiter might be a little bit not as experienced, and they might have asked that on accident, right? So it's nice to be polite and kind of refocus on your skills. Sometimes though, like if they do ask it and it doesn't seem like it was an accident, that's where your part of the interview starts coming in. Do you even want to work at that company, right? If they're asking you this stuff before the job, how are they going to treat you when you actually start working there? Okay, little things to pay attention to on your interview, okay? Now the last question that they'll always ask you is, what questions do you have for us? Please don't say no. Always have questions for them, right? So you could ask them about any training that they may have, any characteristics of successful people in their organization, right? I know sometimes you want to ask them about their personal backgrounds, right? Like, do they like working at the company? That's totally fine, right? But the last question that you definitely always want to ask them is basically, what is the timeline of the hiring process, right? Or what are the next steps in the process? This is very important for you to know, because you need to know if there's another round of interviews, if there's another 2 rounds, if they plan to hire you this week, if they plan to hire you in 2 months, okay? This is really, really, really critical information for you to know. Very rare. I think I only know one person that actually got a job right after the interview. They did the interview, they're like, hey, you're hired, right? It very rarely happens like that, okay? So you really need to know what the timeline of everything is. It's gonna save you a lot of time. And then don't be afraid to ask for a business card or contact information so that you can connect with them on LinkedIn. You could email them a thank you if you didn't have a physical thank you card. Please, please, please don't ask about salary. That is a no-no. You never want to ask about salary in the first in your job interview process, right? You'll bring salary up when you get the job offer, okay? And thank the interviewers for your time. Now, if you have more questions about salary, we also have a salary negotiation workshop that I will be dealing with on Tuesday, March 28th from 3 to 4, my friends. And we'll talk all about the salary negotiation questions you may have. But please don't bring up salary. Sometimes the recruiter will bring up salary during your first or second round of interviews. But pivot your way out of that because you need time to research, right? If they ask you, what do you think I should pay you, right? You could easily just say, I need a little bit more time to research, right? But we could talk a little bit about that later on in the application stage or in the process, okay? But don't answer any questions about your salary during your interview. And then after the interview, right? So remember, we already told you thank everyone, right? Include reasons why you're a strong candidate. Restate appreciation while you're being considered, and this could be in your thank you note, right? And then let the hiring know that your hiring manager know that you're waiting for the next step. And then, of course, though, the biggest thing, though, y'all, is thank you. Even if it's not a big, long, structured thank you email, if you thank them, you've done a good job, okay? A little thank you goes a long way. Now, remember, though, everything that we've talked about, your keys to a successful interview success is to know yourself, know the employer, know the industry you're going to, understand how you're going to fit in, dress to impress, be friendly, and be confident, highlight your skills, experience, and interests, ask any questions, so that way you can be more informed on what you're getting yourself into. Thank you letter, follow-up if necessary. Learn from your mistakes. Y'all, I promise you, your first interview isn't going to be the best. You'll have interviews where you'll come out very frustrated with yourself because you could have done so much preparation, you're going to be like, it didn't go the way that I wanted it to go, right? But you learn with every single interview that you go to. okay? I promise you, you get better, the anxiety starts to lessen. It never goes away, but it does start to get a little bit less, right? And I will tell you that the more you prepare for a role, the less anxiety you have. You'll still be there, but it won't be like overflowing. And then prepare for future interviews as much as you can, okay? Now, all this stuff is going on behind the scenes, so like, behind the scenes, right, they're pre-interviewing candidates. They're asking supervisors if there's even the budget to hire you, right? They're talking about all the other people that also applied. So there's a lot of things that they're doing. Don't be upset if they don't reach back out to you right away. It might take anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, right? But I'd say that if it's 2 weeks after you've interviewed, start reaching back out to them, right? If they for any information, because that's important for you to know too, all right? But they probably won't reach back out to you right away. It's very rare that they do. All right, and then again, y'all don't be shy to practice on mock. It's really, really cool. But again, if you need any questions or like any help with mock interviews, feel free to book an appointment with one of us and we'll help you out too. Okay? These are all the cool events that we're doing, though the next major ones that I think are going to be beneficial for you are the ones that I screenshotted, right? And yeah, we also have a virtual job fair actually too, somewhere in March. It's up there, right? But that's our office hours and contact information. Y'all, do any of you guys have any questions though? I'm definitely opening it up for questions. I know it's a lot of information to digest on a Friday evening, right? But while you guys go home and look over the lovely presentation that I will email you, right? If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. I am here for you. Again, the office right next to y'all foods, okay? Thank you guys so much for having me.